welcome to the muscular system, where we're going to start with muscle tissue. So we're going to build on what we learned about muscle tissue in the tissues unit, and we're going to start to describe the various functions and relate how the skeletal muscle is organized, and there's different shapes and relative strengths. Also tie the types of muscles to bone attachments and distinguish between intrinsic and extrinsic muscles. This is a big unit, so we're also going to talk about the nerve and blood supply and the physiological properties that all muscle types have in common, as well as some of the elastic function and the connective tissue components. When it comes to the functions of the muscular system, that's usually where we like to start. We have movement. The muscle will move parts of your body, pulling on the bones like levers. There are also attachments to the skin, so it provides a lot of facial expressions. We rely on muscles within our ribs, the intercostals, and the diaphragm to aid in breathing. Muscles also line our blood vessels, so they're involved in circulation and help move blood throughout our bodies. Our digestive tract is also lined with some smooth muscle that will contract and move food through our digestive systems. It's going to play a role in communication. Our vocal cords are actually going to be involved there, along with other muscles of the neck and tongue. We need muscles so we can communicate in speech and writing, with our nonverbal communication and expressions as well, like facial expressions. Our muscles also stabilize our bodies and help us maintain posture. Without our muscles, our joints would not be very stable and our bones would break. The muscle system also is going to include round circular muscles called sphincters, and those are going to be found along body openings, and they will open to allow substances to pass through them. For example, sphincters found all throughout the digestive system. There's the lower esophageal sphincter, the pyloric sphincter, the ileocecal sphincter, that all will open as food moves through the digestive tract. There's also the iris of the eye, the colored part of your eye, that is made out of a smooth muscle. And when there is extra light or bright light, that muscle will relax and it will constrict, causing the pupil to get smaller, letting less light in. But then if you go into a dark room, then that muscle is going to contract. And when it contracts, it will dilate and it will allow more light in so you can see in that darkened room. One function that a lot of people forget about is actually heat production, or thermogenesis. As the skeletal muscles contract, they generate a lot of heat, approximately 20 to 30% of your body heat while you're at rest. And then while you exercise and you start to sweat and you get very hot, 85% of that heat production is from the exercise. As you exercise those muscles, they actually begin to secrete a hormone. They secrete hormones that stimulate glucose synthesis or gluconeogenesis by the liver. And it also begins to stimulate the breakdown of visceral fat. Then the last function is glycemic control, because skeletal muscles actually can store a large share of the body's glucose, and so they're going to play a significant role in stabilizing blood glucose levels. as you intake extra blood glucose and those blood glucose levels rise, that will be detected by chemoreceptors within the pancreas. And in response, those organs will release insulin. That insulin will travel around the body and it will tell your liver and your body cells and your skeletal muscle, hey, there's some extra glucose in here. So we need you to get that glucose out of the blood and store it. And so the skeletal muscles can actually take in that extra glucose and store it for when it is needed or when you are in a fasted state. Recall that we have 3 different types of muscle tissue. There is skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. And no matter which one of those 3 we're talking about, they will all share the same characteristics. For example, all 3 will have the characteristic of excitability or responsiveness. And that means that they will respond to chemical signals and they will end up contracting. They will respond to a stretch. They will respond to an electrical change across the plasma membrane. So they are excitable. They also have a characteristic of conductivity. Remember back in like 8th grade science when you learned about insulators and conductors? Well, conductors, they can conduct electricity and an electrical charge can travel down that. Well, these muscle cells are also conductive. There will be a local electrical excitation that starts from a neurotransmitter released from a nerve, and it will set off a wave of excitation that will travel along that muscle fiber and go deep into the muscle fiber. And they also have a characteristic of contractility. And so that is when they will shorten after they are stimulated. Notice I said contractility, not contractibility. It's contractility. And then there is extensibility, meaning they can actually be stretched between contractions. And they can stretch past their original resting state. And then they're going to return to their original length after being stretched. And that's because they have this characteristic of elasticity. And so kind of think of a rubber band. You can stretch a rubber band and it goes back to its original shape. But that's different than like silly putty or like slime. You can stretch slime, but it doesn't go back to its original shape. The elasticity is what allows the muscle to go back to its original resting position. Here is a demonstration that's really fun to do in a lab, and you can actually see this is a chicken breast, like one you get from the grocery store. And in this demonstration, they have it pinned down and it's hooked up to electrodes. And so there is a positive lead and there is a negative lead here. And so there's going to be electricity that runs through this tissue. And because muscle is excitable, it will respond and contract. And see that there? Pretty cool. Pick up with the structural and functional organization next time.